Hey guys, Ricky Widmer here from Most Valuable Podcast. You're about to listen to a little bit of our primetime podcast that we recorded this week. Make sure to go to BlogTalkRadio /Most Valuable Podcast for our full-length podcast that you can go ahead and download. I hope you enjoy it. I know me and Brandon did recording it. We're going to move on into what our real first topic was going to be before Grayson Allen and that news came out. And Brandon, we've got a dandy of a game coming up on Monday. What are we, less than 7 days away from the national championship in college football? And we saw to me, an entertaining first half between Alabama and Washington. It was exactly like, it was me, Dave, and Sean all watching it at Dave's house. And Dave said, you know what, this could be an entertaining first half.
Thanks for the invite.
We knew you were downtown. I
wasn't downtown.
I know we invited you, Brandon. I know we did.
I don't remember getting the invite, but that's okay.
Because I remember Sean
see how it is.
Because I remember Sean wanted to watch the game with you because Alabama and Washington were playing. But it was an entertaining first half, and then Alabama kind of just dominated from there on out. And then on the other side, we had basically an unwatchable game between Clemson and Ohio State, who, I mean, you said coming into today, maybe Ohio State shouldn't have been in there. Maybe a fake ID on them. Maybe a fake ID for the Big Ten team.
And I'm okay taking the hit on this one with people, putting comments out there and calling me an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Ohio State was weak.
They stunk.
And I'm not even just talking of the game against Clemson. Ohio State was not what they were. They certainly were not what they were 2 years ago when they won it all. But Ohio State was nothing exciting. They really didn't look good in that game against Penn State. And Penn State, what a fight they put up in the Rose Bowl. But I think that there were other teams, deserving teams. Again, this can lead to the 8-game, we want to expand to 8 games. Don't talk about that. But this is who were the best teams. Ohio State, I don't think, was one of the best teams going into the playoffs. I just don't think that they were. They didn't even face the number 1 team. They faced Clemson, very good team, but you couldn't score any points against the Clemson Tigers. Ohio State, I do not think, was good enough to be in the playoffs. They got lucky. It's like golf. I'd rather be lucky than good. They were lucky, not good.
Well, and the one point before because I want to get into the national championship game, the one point I will say about Ohio State is I believe from what this week Colin Cowherd came out and said, what we learned this year from the selection committee is they said it is okay to lose a game. Clemson lost a game on a last-second field goal, still made the playoffs. Washington lost to USC. Still made the playoffs. The one thing they were going to say you cannot do, you cannot have a bad loss. And when it comes to USC, when it comes to Penn State, the reason why those teams were not in the playoffs, Penn State had a bad loss to Michigan. A team like Colin Cowherd said, they were too young at the time to play an older team in Michigan. They would have played at the end of the year. Maybe it's a different story. And then USC had a bad loss against Alabama and basically didn't start the right quarterback until week 4 of the college season. So really USC, it's on them. If they would have started Darnold, it might have been a different story. But the thing is, bad losses of what kept those teams out of the playoffs. But when it's all said and done, we have the matchup that I want to say most people wanted. They wanted to see the rematch because last year's game between Clemson and Alabama, Brandon, we were watching it. It was a pretty entertaining game.
It was a very entertaining game. And what we saw is that it was one of the best offenses, if not the best offense last year with Clemson. Just because of Deshaun Watson and what he did so well, not only passing and through the air, but what he did on the ground as well. And I think that when you put those things together, that made for just a dynamic duo of the same guy. And now he has Mike Williams. He didn't have Mike Williams last year. He had Mike Williams for a couple of plays in game number 1 of the season. Lost him to injury. But now Mike Williams is healthy. He's back this season. He's going to be a huge key come Monday night. And I think that Alabama, best defense in the country. This is going to be a great game. But what Deshaun Watson was able to do last year is, again, Alabama was the best defense in the country last year. Deshaun Watson, towards the end of the game, was able to really pick them apart. So if he's able to have success again like that this year, it's going to be another very close game. I expect a good game because I think that, one, it's a rematch of last year's title game. Mm-hmm. And two, these are two well-coached teams. Dabo Swinney, I mean, he has his guys on point. Remember that loss that they had against Pittsburgh? Everyone was like, "Oh no, Clemson is out of this. They're down and out." And no, they weren't.
They almost lost to Virginia Tech
because he kept them on course. Mm-hmm. He kept them on course. Yes, they did. And then on the other side with Alabama, they just don't waver. However,
Alabama's just good.
They
are just good.
But take a look in that game against Washington, and yes, I had been very boisterous that Alabama was going to whoop up on Washington. Washington would have no chance. At the halftime, was the score not 17-7 in favor of Alabama?
The thing with that game is...
Answer me that. It was 17-7 at halftime.
It was close.
The final score was 24-7. Alabama outscored Washington 7-0 in the second half. Well, they didn't score but 7 points in the second half. They didn't need to. But what I'm saying is that Washington's defense holding, having good stance, or is that Alabama taking a little bit off the gas or not getting anything going offensively?
I don't know if it was anything where Washington or Alabama were taking anything off. The comment that I made to Dave and Sean as we were watching the beginning of the Ohio State-Clemson game was, man, this game's a blowout. I mean, you look at that Washington-Alabama game, it was a score where you look at the score and you go, wow, this is a close game. But if you basically just watched the game and kind of took the score away from it and covered up the score box, just watching that game, you would feel like Alabama was up 55-0. Like, it was a game that early on, yes, Washington scored that early touchdown and they had momentum, but it just felt like once Alabama got going, they didn't need to put up a ton of points. All they needed to put up was 24. But by watching that game and just with my eyes, I saw one team that was playing far better than the other. I mean, that Washington offense wasn't getting anything going against that Alabama defense. And the one thing that I'm looking at right now, if you have Snapchat and looked at ESPN today, you know it as well. But Jalen Hurts has run for more yards than every other Alabama quarterback in the last 10 years. He has 891 yards on the ground this season. All other quarterbacks combined have 876. That's 10 years of quarterbacks added up, and he's got more rushing yards than them combined.
You know, Ricky, one thing that I really like is that I like that, people can complain, myself included. I can say, they didn't get all the teams right. The committee did not get all the teams right when they were picking them and placing them for the college football playoff. But when you look at what we have as our national title game, we have
I'm happy with it.
Two best teams in all of college football. Mm-hmm. You've got number one, number two. The game last year was 45-40. It was an impressive game. You look at last year, Alabama beat Michigan State 38-0. Clemson beats Oklahoma 37-17. And now this year, Alabama beats Washington 24-7. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, you have Clemson winning 31-0 over Ohio State.
So
it's really just interesting. You take a look at this, and last year it was Clemson trying to go 15-0. They couldn't do it. Alabama beat them. This year, it's Alabama trying to go perfect. Is Clemson going to be the one to do it?
So riddle me this. Does Clemson win this game? Because of what you just said. Everything with the records are flipped, where this year the team going for undefeated didn't win. The team with the momentum coming off of a big shutout win won the national championship last year. Those both favor Clemson this year. Does Clemson get the W over Alabama? Do we see an upset? Because to me, that would be a huge upset, only because of how affordable and how strong this Alabama defense really is.
We could see it. It's going to be interesting how this offense plays out for Alabama.
With Lane Kiffin no longer calling plays.
A weird situation. And I want to get into that for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to part. I caught part of it getting in the car earlier this week when Mike and Mike were talking to Lane Kiffin. I only caught part of the interview, but Lane Kiffin says that he himself and himself only made the decision to step away because it was in the best interest of the players. Now, no one believes that, okay? No one believes it. People believe that it was so toxic in there that Nick Saban said, Lane, gotta go. Gotta go away. And Steve Sarkisian was hired to be the guy to take over in that position. Again, something we all know. I just don't know how this is going to affect the guys. And apparently I'm hearing that the chemistry between Sarkisian and Alabama's offensive players is good right now. But I just find it so interesting that Lane Kiffin, one, is stepping away now. Why didn't he do this a couple weeks ago? Why didn't he do this a couple of weeks ago and say, you know what? I know what I want to do. I want to go be a head coach. I'm going to be a head coach. I'm going to Florida Atlantic. I'm now the coach of Florida Atlantic. I'm going to step away now. Instead, he waits. We're going to pretend it really was him. He waits a week before the national championship game. And you say, you know what? I'm just now seeing that I can't do both. And one's got to come before the other. And now it's going to have to be my Florida Atlantic job. Huh? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, Ricky. And I think that it's even more interesting and hilarious when Lane Kiffin says he's not going to be down on the sidelines because he won't be able to do that. And he's not going to be the offensive coordinator, but he might be up in the box. If you're at the game, you can obviously call the plays and game plan all the way up if you're able to take time to still be at the game. Doesn't make sense, Ricky. Doesn't make sense.
The thing that I was thinking about this is I heard him on the Dan Patrick Show. I believe it was Tuesday. I heard him on the Dan Patrick Show. And the one thing that he did say was he said, you know what? I don't know if it was me of why we were off, but he said after that win over Washington, he said, I just thought to myself, I can't let something happen in the national championship game and cost a perfect season and the game for the students, the kids who have worked so hard this season. But then he made other comments like you mentioned, the being up in the booth for the game. My whole thing with this was I don't think this is a Lane Kiffin thing. I think this was Nick Saban basically after that game being like, you know what? Get out. Because the one thing that you got to think of, like Nick Saban alone, Nick Saban's usually a guy that likes consistency. He would be a guy that says, no, Lane, you're going to stay. Something had to be going on. I mean, Nick Saban was fired up in that game, and he was angry in that game. Something had to be going on to where Nick Saban had to have said to Lane Kiffin, this can't work. This cannot work. Just get out, go to Florida Atlantic. We'll win without you.
I don't disagree with that. I don't doubt that something like that happened, because when you score, 30 plus points or close to 30 plus points a game, you're held under that average. You're at 24 points against a Pac-12 opponent that you should be beating pretty well. Mm-hmm. Again, yes, you have to give credit to Washington. Their defense played well in that first half. Their defense did play well in that first half for most of the first half. But Alabama, who's been able to put up points on points on points all season long, you score 24, and I just don't know. One thing that they finally saw was a running game from Bo Scarborough. Finally, he has 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're going to need him big in the game against Clemson, but it didn't seem like it was a very good game plan, and that's from a viewer, that's from a fan,
Mm-hmm.
and if a fan and a viewer is seeing that, a coach is seeing so much more. I don't think Nick Saban was too pleased. And Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin have been at odds for quite some time. I think Nick Saban had enough, and he said, Lane, we're done.
Well, and good thing for Alabama that they have a guy like Sarkisian, because one of the things that remember...
We know that was strategic.
And one of the things I do remember almost verbatim from that Dan Patrick interview was Lane Kiffin made a comment of how you could basically let him and Sarkisian are so much on the same page and think so much alike that basically you can put them in different rooms, give them a situation like ball on the 3, 4th and goal on the 3, give me your top 5 plays that you would run. And he said that if you took those lists with them in separate rooms, that those lists would be identical. That they would have the same 5 plays in the same order. Like that's how much they think on the same page. And I look at it and I go, okay, maybe like that's good for Alabama, but I really think that this Lane Kiffin thing had to be Nick Saban saying, just get out of here. Just get out of here. Focus on Florida Atlantic, because that's something that when you're a head coach, you got a lot to deal with. You're not just dealing with the day-to-day stuff, and really it comes down to how much are you really here as we are preparing for a national championship game. And really the one thing, and I know this is getting kind of off the topic of Clemson, Alabama, but I want to throw this out there. Maybe it throws a little bit at a foreshadowing of what Lane's going to be like as a head coach, because look at last year. Kirby Smart did it with no problem, and he was going to Georgia. He was going to a big-time program.
Not if you listen to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin will tell you in his interviews that Kirby Smart struggled with it last year, and that's why, maybe the defense didn't do as well as they could have done, because Kirby had his mind elsewhere. So Lane is just putting other people under the bus with him. And Alabama won that game last year. They won the national championship.
Or the national trophy, depending on who you're asking.
Phyllis from Mulga, I hope she's back. I hope she is back. She's got to be, right?
She's got to be.
Yeah, I hope so. But Kirby Smart did not leave until after that game was over.
Mm-hmm. He was able to do it.
Because guess what? Him and Saban were able to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Kiffin, Saban, we saw it.
There was a little bit of rough.
In multiple games.
Uh-huh.
But it's not just Nick Saban that has struggled to get along with him. Everywhere he's gone, he has struggled to get along with others. Mm-hmm. He never can play nice in the sandbox. That had to start as a kid. But just look at it. USC was terrible. Tennessee atrocious. Lane Kiffin could struggle. We could see it. We could definitely see it, but I think that you're onto something, Ricky. You're possibly onto something as what he might be like as a head coach. And hopefully, it's organized. Hopefully, he brings in good coordinators and everything like that. He's going to need to.
And Brandon, I'm not going to ask you your prediction of who's going to win this game. The listeners are going to have to go to our YouTube page and watch our Keys to the Game video for that. What I want to ask you to close this out before we get into the other topics on the podcast is, what's your prediction for the game as at large? Are we going to see a blowout? Are we going to see a close game? Give me your overall what we're going to see in this game without giving me an actual winner.
I think we're going to see a very good game. I think we're going to see certainly a back and forth game for a little while. And I say that even more so this year because last year Clemson was good. This year, Clemson blows out 31-0 Ohio State. This team that, so many people look at, whoa, Ohio State. Wow. Again, I don't have as big of I never had as big of hopes for Ohio State when they got into the playoffs, but Clemson didn't hold them. They didn't get a point. They held them scoreless. Clemson's going to be definitely a team to be reckoned with, but Alabama's defense, the best defense, I think, to possibly ever play. For this group of guys, possibly the best defense to ever play for Alabama. We are in for a very, very good game. And yes, check out our Keys to the Game video that we're going to be doing, because that is where you're going to get the prediction from Ricky and from myself about who is going to win this game, who we believe is going to win this game. It's going to be a good one. Ricky, I hope we're watching it together.
Oh, we will.
Absolutely.
Just like last year, the Primetime Podcast guys going to get together, watch it, and we're going to be tweeting during that game. But the last thought that I had on it has to come from coming into the semifinal game. This Alabama defense, like you said, is good. And I can't wait to watch this offense from Clemson with Deshaun Watson and those weapons that they have, Gallman and Williams, and then going up against this defense. Because this defense coming into the semifinal games, teams on average were, for the entire year, they gave up 60 yards per game on the ground. Myles Gaskin, 34 yards on only 10 carries. Washington as a team, 44 yards on the ground. That is where I know Deshaun Watson is not a dual-threat quarterback. Don't call me a dual-threat quarterback. But Clemson needs to win the rushing battle and get some rushing yards going, which might be a hard task because that front seven is really, really good. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below in the comment section. Comment. Let us know who you got winning the game. What are you thinking? And then go check out our Keys of the Game video for our exact keys and who we have winning the game. Well, thank you guys for checking out this video from the Primetime Podcast. If you want to check out more, click right over here. The video's right over here. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out.